Welcome to Obsessions After Dark. Where the more Nope, I'm going to start over. I looked
Okay.
up to the camera. I don't want to do that. Okay.
Excuse me.
Welcome to Obsessions After Dark, where the morally gray are irresistible, the red flags wave proudly, and happily ever afters come with trigger warnings. We're your hosts, Cassie
And Lori. Each week, we're diving into the darkest corners of romance, breaking down the books, the characters, the chaos, and everything that keeps us turning pages long past midnight.
Disclaimer, this podcast discusses fictional books which are intended for adult readers. We'll be discussing themes found in dark romance. Please take care of your mental health and always check your triggers before reading.
Welcome back to the show. Today, we are getting tangled up in Leigh Rivers' Web of Silence duet. And when I say tangled, I mean you might want to bring a pair of scissors because this web is messy.
So if you haven't read these yet, the duet is made up of Little Stranger and Little Liar, and we're going to be talking about both books today. So this is your official warning. This will contain spoilers, so if you haven't read them yet, read them and then come back.
Yeah, so this is a dark romance, and it is dark. You think Zayd is dark? Well, Malachi is way darker. We're going to talk about obsessions, revenge, trauma, manipulation, violence, stalking, and a relationship that's basically one giant emotional red flag. And yet, we absolutely love it.
Yeah, we're still sitting here like, okay, we know, but hear us out. It's really good. But that's what Leigh Rivers does. She gives you men who in real life would have you changing your locks. But in a book, we're like, how much is the hardcover?
Exactly. Okay, so Cassie, if you had to explain this duet to somebody who's never read it, never heard of it, what would you say?
So at the center of the duet is Olivia and Malachi Vise, who are not bio-related, but grew up as foster siblings. So from a young age, Malachi develops extremely intense attachments to Olivia. His entire world basically revolves around her. So right from the start, we know that this is going to be a taboo romance because we know that it's so much more than just what regular foster siblings have as a relationship. Olivia isn't just the girl he loves. She is his person, his obsession, and his weakness. And something that makes Malachi such an interesting character is that he's mute by choice, which is his response to trauma and how he keeps himself safe. Olivia isn't simple by any means. She was the first child that the Vises rescued from an awful home. And when she first meets Malachi, she's so excited to have a brother and have another child in the home, but she could have never guessed what they'd actually become. She knows that their relationship isn't normal, and she knows it isn't healthy. But there's also this connection between them that she just can't resist.
Yeah, so that's the basic gist of it. And boy, that's a lot. When you hear it, I remember when I, obviously, because, like we've said, Leigh Rivers does no wrong, except Aria. So when I read EOD and then knew I was going into this one, this is the one that I had heard had the siblings. And I was like, ugh, I don't know how I'm going to like that. But she writes it so well where it's not weird. And it's like it fits really well. Like, their trauma, which we're going to unpack, and it just works. I don't know why.
Yeah. And also, they aren't blood related. And I think that really helps everybody mentally. And, who are we to kink shame, what they do,
You do you, boo.
Right.
So let's talk about what makes this plot so addictive, because on paper, you can explain the plot, but there's something about these two that pulls you into this completely messed up web with them. And I think the obvious place to start is Malachi, because Cassie, we need to talk about Malachi. So first impression, when you started Little Stranger, what did you think he was going to be like?
So honestly, I went in blind to this, and I also read this before I actually read the Edge of Darkness series.
Oh.
So yeah, and I know that's a no-no, but unfortunately that's how it happened. So I really didn't know what to expect or what to think, but I had heard it was really good. So I just knew that I was going to give it a try and see what happened. But I can say I can see why he is so compelling to readers, myself included. He gives readers something that dark romance is great at, and that is extremes. His feelings aren't halfway. His obsession, jealousy, protectiveness, anger, and attachment are all turned up to an uncomfortable level. Readers never have to wonder what Olivia means to him. We know she is the center of his world. Another huge part of Malachi is the contradiction in him. He can be terrifying and vulnerable at the same time. You recognize what he is doing is wrong while still understanding his emotions underneath it.
Yeah. So for me, Malachi just he has something about him. He had my heart from the beginning. He wasn't like Cade, who was like hard and tough in the beginning, when you first start EOD, but he had this brokenness from the get go. And that is what just kind of pulled me in. It like had my heart. He's in the foster system, he's getting his last chance with the Vises, and he sees Olivia, and she just grounds him immediately in a way that nothing else had. So to me, I could see that he needed her, and my heart was attached right from there. And then the story unfolding obviously made sense to me knowing that. I mean, of course, we find out more in Little Liar, to the extremes of what that trauma was. But even from the beginning, you've seen that brokenness, and that's what pulled me into him.
Right. And I think that in the beginning, Olivia kind of makes it seem like she's kind of playing Malachi in a way, like she's hot and cold constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of us were like, gosh, does she really love him? Or, what is she doing? Is she messing with his head? But the more that I read, the more I see that Olivia was so groomed that I think that she did love him, but I think she just felt so indebted to the mom that she just couldn't see past that for a while.
Yeah, and she was, I mean, like you said, groomed. She truly was from
Oh,
a
yeah.
very young age. And so, you've got now not just Malachi who comes in broken, but Olivia also.
Right. And I think one of the most important things to take into account here is that Malachi was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD, because that's an important part of understanding his character and how he was written. Just because of the ASPD doesn't mean that he's incapable of love, but it also doesn't excuse all the bad things that he does either. Malachi doesn't have a healthy love. He doesn't love naturally or express love through reassurance, vulnerability, definitely not communication, or emotional openness. Instead, his love comes out in a language that he understands: possession, protection, loyalty, obsession, and control. To him, I love you and your mind are the exact same thing. He may not experience empathy, guilt, attachment, or emotional connection like Olivia or readers do, but that doesn't automatically mean it's non-existent.
Yeah, I agree. So, yeah, and I think for Malachi, because you can have that question of like, was Malachi just genuinely in love with all of those difficulties? And I think he was, but it started with brokenness and a need, and then, like you said, possession and then obsession. But that is his love. You see him attached to her from the beginning as that thing that grounds him. If you remember, like when he smells her hair that very first time, it's like that she just put him at ease. And I think initially it probably was love as a sibling, and he starts to become protective and possessive of her, which leads to obsession, but it becomes love in the way that he can love. So I think, yeah, absolutely, he's in love with her. But what do you think, Cassie? Do you think? No, let me say. So,
Okay.
what do you think, Cassie? When do you think he actually became obsessed with her? Do you think it was before everything happened throughout the story, or did the separation and revenge start or intensify it?
I think that that day in the airport when they were 7 and 8 years old is when it started. Obviously not sexually, that not as kids, but it eventually grew into that. And in my opinion, the obsession started from there on that first day. He clearly told her that you're mine right on day one. He knew right then that he would never leave her. But I want to know, do you think his obsession is about love, revenge, possession, or all three?
Yeah, I think it encompasses all of it. And I think it's all interchangeable to Malachi. All three make up how he loves her. So, like you said, I don't think he is capable of ever letting her go. And that's the thing about dark romance MMCs that I love. I love the intensity of Malachi, and I love the ones, especially that Leigh writes, where they cannot live without their woman. They would rather die than live without this person who is their entire being. And Malachi is that way. So, yeah, I think it's all of that. His obsession is love, it's revenge towards anyone that hurts her, it's possession. It's all of that for him. Okay, so Cassie, I have a question for you now. I want to know your opinion if Olivia had completely rejected him. What do you think would have happened? Do you think that Malachi could have ever potentially accepted that?
Absolutely not. She is the person that he formed his deepest emotional attachment to. She's connected to him in a way that nobody else could be. I don't think he was really letting her go. Like, even, when she left the wedding, everything, I don't think he was really letting her go. I think he let her go for the moment until he made himself a better person. Because when, she left, he started going to therapy and seeing a speech therapist. I think he was just making himself more worthy of her. So as soon as he felt like he was a better version of himself, he would have brought her back, whether she was married or not. I don't think he would have cared. I don't think he would have cared if she would have had kids. When he was ready, he was going to come back and get her. But do you think Malachi knows just how obsessed he is with Olivia?
So that one's an interesting answer, I think. So I will say yes to that. But like you said, he has antisocial personality disorder. So someone who has that, they have that lack of empathy and they process attachment through ownership. But they can absolutely realize and be fully aware of their obsession. Someone with the ASPD does have full cognitive abilities, and they can observe their own patterns or even have guilt or alarm over an unhealthy possession, but they view it more as a game that they intend to win. It's like the thrill of the chase kind of thing. So it gives them a massive surge of adrenaline and dopamine. And in his POV, you see that he proudly owns that obsession. He sees it and he owns it. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, he absolutely knows how obsessed he is.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think he wants Olivia to love him or fear him or both?
So I think it's both. He wants her to love him, but also to fear him. Those are two things that serve two different emotional needs for him. At the core of who Malachi is, he wants Olivia to love him. He wants her to choose him and accept him how he is. He wants her to see everything of him, even his flaws, and still say, I choose you. But also, if you remember, Olivia taught Malachi exactly what she wanted from him during their lessons. And Malachi knows she gets off on fear and, being hunted, chased, all those things. So while he loves her fear just as much as she does, I think he really just gets off on anything to do with Olivia. But from the beginning, Olivia molded him into the perfect lover for her because she taught him everything he needed to know. And it was just a happy accident that they loved the same things.
And I wonder with Olivia if she really realized that's what she was doing, or if it was just kind of a in the moment thing. It's taboo. I really shouldn't want my foster brother, but I do. And here's the way I can have him. Or if she knew, she was molding him to be what she wanted or what she needed.
Yeah, I think with her, it started out with she was really just trying to help. But in the process, she wanted him so much that she started putting in her wants and what she likes because, she somewhere needed that from him too. Because, she was being forced with these men that she hated. She didn't want anything to do with them. She didn't love them, but she didn't have a choice. So the one that she did, she could teach exactly what she had learned she liked.
Yeah, she got that choice back with Malachi.
Yes. So let's circle back to him and him being nonverbal. What do you think about him not being able to communicate with his words?
Yeah, so having an MMC who is nonverbal, as a side note, I feel like it would be a challenge to write that, or any character like that for that matter, where, the reader can't gauge his mood through tone, but Leigh does a really good job of helping us understand his emotions anyway. And so kind of some of the same things that you have said is that we learned that before he's adopted, Malachi survives severe physical and emotional trauma, abuse, and neglect. And his refusal to speak is that trauma in self protection form. And his total silence becomes a means of asserting his autonomy and reclaiming his control. So Malachi, like you said, can physically speak, but he chooses not to, which is also interesting in this story. And we learn that he does secretly practice using his voice while being in prison for 8 years so he could say Olivia's name, which is just, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
So Cassie, that makes me wonder, do you think Malachi is actually more vulnerable when he speaks? Because he doesn't talk very often. So when he does, it almost feels like he's letting his guard down a little. Do you think that's why those moments hit differently?
For sure. Malachi's silence isn't just the absence of speech. Silence is his safety. After everything he goes through before coming to live with the Vises, he feels like talking gives somebody the ability to hurt you. Also, his silence is something that he can control. The first time we hear him try to speak is when he's desperate and when he's trying to call out Olivia's name. But it's been too long and he just can't get the words out. So, like you said, in prison, he spends the time trying to learn and teach himself how to say her name, even though, it's not quite perfect. And he keeps practicing, but by the end of the book, only a handful of people ever actually hear him speak.
So I think that's really interesting that Olivia is really one of the only ones who gets to hear that vulnerability. And we see a peek in Little Liar where Bass is there and Malachi and Olivia are in the back seat. They're having sex while Bass is driving. And he says to, what's the guy's name? Barry. He says to Barry on the phone, the mute just spoke and the siblings are having sex in the back seat. But it literally was like the funniest thing ever to me. And I was laughing out loud. But Bass here, but again, it's for her, it's not for him he doesn't talk to other people that way. It's just a special thing for her.
Yeah. So then that's going to bring us to Olivia, because so much of what we understand about Malachi and even the way he communicates is connected to her. So let's talk about Olivia and what was your first impression of her?
Yeah. So she was different to me than Stacy in EOD. I didn't love Stacy from the get-go, but Olivia, I did. I really liked her. She didn't feel unapproachable or whiny. She just loved Malachi and wanted to help him in any way that she could. She'd spend time with him, be there when he was scared, make music for him for his birthday, learn sign language for him. So I really liked her character. And she seemed really innocent, but we know that she's not, but she portrayed that. But I love that she felt the same way about Malachi. And, she had to make some big choices for herself along the way. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that for a minute, because I want to know where you land on that. Do you think Olivia regretted what she did to Malachi, or do you think she regretted what it ultimately cost her?
I actually didn't like Olivia in the beginning. I thought she was playing mind games with Malachi. Yes, I was one of those people. And I thought that she really couldn't be this naive and just really want to please the foster mom that much enough to, hurt Malachi and ultimately herself. I won't go too I won't go too in depth with that right now, but my opinion of her did eventually change. So fast forward, I don't think Olivia was scared of him when he came back into her life. I think she was hoping for it. There's a part of Olivia that has always wanted Malachi. And when she wasn't quite sure if she actually, oh, that's not what I said. That's not what I was supposed to say. There's a part of Olivia that has always wanted Malachi. So when he kidnaps her and she wasn't quite sure if it was him, she actually threatens him with himself. And I think that's because she was expecting for him to come back into her life.
So for those of you who may not know what we're talking about here, this is when Malachi almost kills his foster dad and he ends up getting arrested for it. So like you're saying, Cassie, whether she regretted what she did to Malachi or what it cost her, I kind of think it was a mix of both. I think Malachi comes back bigger, stronger, and more unhinged than before. And Olivia knows what he's capable of. And so I think her fear is rooted at some points in actual survival instincts. But even though he scares her, there is that primal, dark part of Olivia that really feels the safest when he's protecting her from the world. You know, he's always been her monster in a sense. So I think there was a part of her too that was scared when Malachi came back, but you know, we see the time that he was gone and her journal and that info in there and that she still wanted it.
And I do think that when Malachi came back, I think he intended to be scary to her. I think he came back with a point to prove, but once he seen her and had her, it was over. That love just came back and he just couldn't commit the way that he thought he could.
Yeah, and I mean, is it 8 years that he was in prison, I think? And
Yeah.
the entire time, that's all his thoughts were about was her, you know. Even if she and hers was too, even if she tried to pretend that she had a life and she could kind of move on, we know reading that her heart was still with Malachi.
Yeah, the whole time, the trial was going on and everything. I mean, Malachi got the voicemails, every voicemail that she left him of, it was, I hate you, but I love you the whole time. And I think that that's what, when he got out, I think that's what solidified this for him, was that love is there. She's telling him that and he's going and he's getting her.
Okay, so Cassie, then how much do you think Olivia understands Malachi? Because she sees a side of him that other people don't.
I think that she has the ability to see him, but I also think that Olivia is kind of blinded by certain things because, in my opinion, like when the girl said that she had slept with Malachi and Olivia believes it right off the jump. I think that was her insecurities because, I'm sitting there screaming at her, like, he didn't do that. Now stop it. What are you thinking? Like, you are everything to him. But she falls into that trap. And that's what even starts the whole situation for him to hurt his dad, to go to prison, everything is all because she believed that he had slept around with this girl that he had never touched. Now, I do agree that maybe he shouldn't have used the date with this girl to get back at Olivia because that always opens the door for things. But, it was just teenage things and it was a mistake. But, he walked right out of it. So I do think that Olivia has the ability to understand, but I think she just lets certain things get in the way.
Yeah, and I feel like too, maybe she didn't understand Malachi fully, maybe even till, close to the end of the book, after he gets out of prison or whatever it is. It's like I don't think she understands the depth of his brokenness and how he is because of that.
Right. And I think that comes along with just being a teenager, plus dealing with mental health. Anytime you're in a relationship and there are mental health barriers, it's always hard and it's always complicated. And to be so young, that has to make things so much harder. I personally couldn't imagine. But I think that is kind of why things went south is because she was just too young and him too to fully understand, his ASPD and how to navigate a relationship with mental health disorders.
Yeah, and I think that Olivia brings out the worst in Malachi and the most honest version of him because for him, his worst behavioral traits are his most honest self. Because of
Yes.
that antisocial personality disorder, his natural unmasked state is violent, it's possessive, and it's really entirely empty of standard societal empathy. Olivia kind of acts like the catalyst that forces him to drop those masks that he wears for the rest of the world. She's his only vulnerability. What do you think about that? Or what do you think?
I think so. I mean, obviously, everybody knows that the way to get to Malachi is through Olivia. I mean, she is his absolute weak spot. But eventually, Malachi gets a new one, and I absolutely love that. But yeah, for the majority of the story, absolutely, she is his most vulnerable space ever. I mean, look when she was at the party with Parker, Malachi ends up coming up with a couple of his friends baseball bats and he beats the shit out of them because he will not handle anything that's happening to her. And I actually love that the dad is the same way. If you know anything about the story, you know that Malachi and his foster dad's relationship is very strained the whole time. And when he comes back from that party where he beat the crap out of Parker, he looks at his dad and, signs, "Don't worry, dad, I got him." And that was one moment that they actually could bond together with.
Yeah, I loved that he was able to just say to his dad, like, I took care of it, and he was proud of him.
Yes. So, with that being said, what do you think actually keeps Malachi and Olivia connected?
Yeah, it's for sure shared childhood trauma, that other person can see them and understand them fully, I think. But then there's also codependency. And then I think the sexual attraction. I feel like the things that they went through made it impossible for them to be with a normal person. They need somebody like themselves. And it's almost like their psychological wounds fit together like puzzle pieces. Olivia needs safety, Malachi needs control. And she finds the safety in his violence. He finds the control in exploiting her fears and making them stop. So, really, it's kind of a perfect match.
Right. And, it's something that they share together because while Olivia does have these fears, she loves them being played on. And she loves the
Mhm.
way that Malachi brings those fears to life in a safe, healthy environment. And that's what we talk about all the time on here is, dark romance is something that we get to experience these triggering, fearful things in a safe environment. And Olivia is basically just acting those out with her partner because she is safe and she knows that at the end of the day, he will not harm her. So she is like a dark romance girly right there.
Yeah, I mean, a normal partner would try to heal Olivia's fears or set healthy boundaries with Malachi's stalking and tracking. But that's not going to work for Malachi and Olivia. Those puzzle pieces of trauma, they provide what the other needs.
Yeah, and I think it's fun for them deep down. They
Yeah.
like how Malachi puts the spider on her constantly. And that's one thing that Olivia, she likes fear, but that spider is a different story for her because it's the one thing that even up until the epilogues of the book, she still is not getting over. And she does not want Cordelia anywhere near her.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is something that they say is the only way to get through your fears is, just exposure to it. So I'm assuming that eventually she is going to get better with her. But yeah, I think that healing the fears is not necessarily an option for them. So instead, they just play on it and it works for them.
Yeah, and when she was, tied up with Cordelia on her, she did not seem, I mean, she was scared, but I
Oh,
think
yeah.
she didn't mind.
Yeah. That's her biggest struggle right there is she doesn't know if she wants to be turned on or if she wants to freak out because those spiders are not her deal.
Yeah. Well, and like in dark romance, physical intimacy is rarely just about desire. It's usually a battleground for control and submission. And because
Yeah.
Malachi can't communicate verbally and Olivia's trapped in constant mental hypervigilance, I think sex becomes the only space where they can fully let go. There's like full safety there. And
Yeah.
then the adrenaline of fear and the rush of sexual attraction blur together. Malachi's physical dominance acts like an anchor, and Olivia needs to cut herself off from her brain. And at the same time, that gives that to her. That submission to Malachi gives him the control that his ASPD demands.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think that Olivia is very submissive. And I think that she wants to do whatever pleases Malachi. And I think that while also at the same time of being foster siblings, when they at least were living at home, I think the element of being caught really also made it, a more fun experience for
Yeah.
them because they were waiting to get caught. Like they were waiting for the mom to walk in or the dad to walk in. And I think that was something they really enjoyed too, was the fear of, am I going to get caught?
Yeah, especially for her. And then,
Hmm.
we see his control come back into play when dad walks in and he's doing a sexual act with her and like not ashamed. He's like, she tastes delicious. I mean, he's
Yeah.
like, I think it was perfect for both of them. So that fear for her and then that control of like, if they walk in, I'm going to assert dominance here. And it's almost like it kind of makes me think of like a dom and sub relationship kind of. I know it's not, but how that plays out with them.
Right, and I think that's an important thing too to talk about is how the foster dad maybe could have been more vigilant on learning about his ASPD and how to go about things and how not, because in that moment the foster dad really set him off. Clearly, I mean, he got hurt very badly. So
Yeah.
I think that that's so important of why we need to respect mental health disorders and why we need to really learn about them if we have somebody in our life that we love that has these, and just try to respect them because, they can't help it as much as you dislike them having this. It's a hard situation for everybody, but unfortunately, it can't always be absolutely fixed. And I do wish for their relationship that the dad would have maybe put a little bit more work in to figure out how to approach Malachi in a way that works with this ASPD.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't know if when they got Malachi, if they already had that diagnosis. I know the foster lady said this was his last chance. I don't know what testing had been done previously, but you would think a parent would want to try to figure out, how best to help these kids that are coming in from a really abusive foster or a really abusive home situation into a foster system home. So I agree. I think dad and mom could have done a lot better with that, but they were just so focused on appearances. And, you know, it was like that. I'm glad that they gave him a home, but even, when they separate Malachi and Olivia and they separated because Malachi kissed her, but also that could have been a situation where, like, let's understand what's going on here because the worst thing they did was separate them and then it got worse. So, yeah, I agree. I think they could have done much better trying to understand the mental health issues that he had, but then also her. But I don't know that they could have the way they were.
Right. Well, just to touch on that, actually, Malachi didn't get diagnosed with that till he was 15. So they had already had
Okay.
Malachi for 7 years by the time he got this diagnosis. So he was with them when he got diagnosed. So, I mean, as soon as he got that diagnosis, they should have figured out different ways to handle him. But it seems like instead, when he got that diagnosis, they pretty much just put him on a different wing of the house and just,
Yeah.
kind of steered clear of him. That's not helpful for anybody. And I mean, I do think that meds is a certain conversation and it's a personal thing, but I know as a parent of a child with mental health, I think that meds are the better way to go. So they at least have the option to control it. And I think they just kind of said, well, he won't take them, so wash my hands of it. Did you try though? Did you ever sit him down
Yeah.
in a nice way? I think they could have done better on trying to relate and, you know, build a better relationship with him instead of shoving him on a different wing of the house and saying, "Oh, well, he'll be 18 soon."
Yeah. And even, they knew that Olivia was his weakness. So they could have even talked to Olivia and said, hey, could you talk to him about medication? And maybe you can get through to him when I know that we can't. So there were options that could
Yes.
have been done.
Yeah, I do think they kind of failed him on that part. But him and his foster dad do get a relationship back. That's the good thing. It just takes a lot, but they do eventually get it back. And that warmed my heart to see their relationship blossom as well as Olivia and his.
I'm really glad in the end that dad was supportive of their relationship and at least there in some capacity. And like you said, that they ended up having a father son ish relationship, even if it was an unconventional way.
Yeah, so much so that he actually wouldn't dissolve the adoption for either of them so they could get legally married. He wouldn't.
Yeah.
And not to like stop them, I don't think that was what it was. I think it was because they were his kids and he wasn't going to let one go.
Yeah. And it took him a while, I think, to come around to that. But you read like even in the beginning, he starts to see the things of how Malachi is with her, and I think eventually he knew it would come to that. But that also took a lot of forgiveness on his part to forgive Malachi. almost kill
Oh,
him.
at one point, he even says, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'm going to try. And for Olivia's sake, and I do think that forgiveness eventually came, but it took Malachi opening up to him, Malachi to accept that love from him. So, it's both parties. While,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely the dad was wronged. I mean, he was hurt badly, but, it took the forgiveness from him and Malachi to open up and allow him to be his dad too.
Yeah, and for him to kind of see the reason Malachi acted that way. It's not that it wasn't his fault, but with mental illness, there is a measure of it that, it's kind of out of your control. So at
Yeah.
least for him to be able to consider that and to try to forgive and seemingly eventually forgive, understanding like Malachi has limitations and this is how he handled that situation and it's not normal, but Malachi's not normal. So do you think, Cassie, that their relationship's going to be sustainable long term, or do you think they're eventually just going to consume and destroy each other? All right. So, Cassie, do you think then that this relationship that they have is actually sustainable long term, or do you think that it's just going to eventually consume them and destroy both of them?
So I think that's another reason why this story works so well, because it's not just here's a really messed up relationship and let's watch it unfold. There's so much happening to them and around them, with the secrets, the manipulation, and the things that we're told versus the things that we find out later. I think after everything that happens with them, and, we move into the part where we find out about Isaac. They actually have a son that comes later. So I think Isaac was actually one of the missing puzzle pieces that they didn't know that they needed. And in Malachi's case, even wanted, he always said, please
Mhm.
don't make me a father. But after Isaac come along, he became Malachi's best friend. And Olivia even states at one point that, she was Malachi's whole world until Isaac. And now she just lives in it and she absolutely loves that. So I think after him, that was the final piece to say, yes, this is lasting a lifetime. So, yes,
Yeah.
I
And I
do think
don't,
it's sustainable. Sorry.
no, 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 you're good. You're good. Do you want to say that again? So, because I to interrupt there.
It's okay. So, yes, I absolutely do think it's sustainable and it will last a lifetime.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that because of how Malachi is, and because of how Olivia is, and the two of them together, it's not possible for them to consume and destroy each other. Like they live and
Mm-mm.
breathe off of one another. If they
Yeah.
consume each other, it's in the best possible way.
Yes.
And, like you said with Isaac, yeah, he didn't want to be a dad. I get that. But then you see Malachi become this amazing dad and how much
Yes.
his whole world is wrapped up in Isaac. And that's something he never seen coming. And
No.
I love that there's that growth for him and that he sees he's not just broken. Like he's capable of being whole. And he's whole with Olivia and he's whole with Isaac. So I loved that.
Yeah, that definitely was the piece that this needed. Malachi, yes, he lived for Olivia, but once Isaac came in, that was the thing to push Malachi over and say, I am going to be the best version of myself for this little life that I've created.
Yeah, Olivia was the initial nudge and then Isaac was that missing piece.
Yes. So, what do you think Leigh Rivers did really well with this duet?
Well, I love that she didn't have like a fix it trope. She didn't write it where Olivia needed to be fixed or needed to fix Malachi or vice versa. She wrote them being loved from start to finish with all the anxiety, the personality disorder, all of it. And then loving each other fully, even as broken as they are. And to me, that's the ideal love story. And I think that's why I loved this duet so much and why it's become a comfort read for me now. Coming from my own trauma, I can relate in saying that I've wanted to be loved fully in my brokenness without somebody trying to fix me. And I see that in this story. And not only in real life, having that with my husband being healed, but then me reading it and seeing it here with Malachi and Olivia, it's a healing thing for me. So I love this story. It will always be, again, I know it's because Leigh Rivers, but it's a good story and I loved it. What about you? What do you think she did well with it?
Well, I love any story that brings light to mental health because I am somebody who suffers severely from mental health to the point that it actually affects my day to day life. So I love seeing other people that, like to bring that into stories and watching characters and how they learn to live life with it and to develop relationships, maintain relationships. And even though that was, really hard for Malachi, he did it just with one person until his son. And you see him slowly accepting these people into his life and them learning to love him for him. Because that is one thing that I always struggle with is, am I too broken? Am I too messed up? Will somebody be able to love me despite my flaws? Because I am heavily flawed. Mental health really affects my life so much that it makes me sometimes question, am I too much for people? But then you get to see somebody like Malachi, who is, as I said, the extreme, everything turned up to 100, get love. And it's always so motivating in a way to say, like, you know what? Yes, I do. Because if somebody gets love, and I know it's all fictional, but I've learned throughout the years that there is somebody for everybody.
Yeah, and I think, we've kind of touched on this before, actually a couple of times, but I think that's why you and I both love dark romance so much, is because you see this in book form. You see these people who are so broken in mental, emotional, physical ways, and they find that person who just loves them. And they're not trying to fix them. They're not trying to, um, you know, change them. They're just there to love them. And we see these villains, if you want to call them a villain, in the worst state of themselves. And yet they love and they receive love. So I think, I'm sure other genres focus on mental health, but, and maybe dark romance isn't labeled kind of that way, but I see that in dark romance. I see trauma in book form, and it is so healing for me. Like we've talked about trauma, and then you and I both have chronic illness, so we have, all the things. And not only is it an escape for chronic illness and mental things, but it really is healing. You really get to see somebody be loved, and you're like, yeah, okay. And then to the extreme, like, I'm not that bad, or I'm like, I'm not, doing that. Not that it's bad. Mental health is not bad, but it is healing. So that's my tangent, but I love that about this book so much.
Right. And I think the one thing, yes, obviously all genres touch on mental health, but I think what makes it so different and what makes this genre so special is that it also takes the trauma and the mental health, because not all mental health is something you're born with. Sometimes it develops through trauma. And I think that's such a great thing to focus on those things because, myself, I don't just have, just mental health things that I was born with. I have developed ones through trauma. So it's so nice to see a genre that touches on that and doesn't always like make the person 100% better, or, they find a way to fix it and it no longer affects them. They find a way to be loved through it.
Yeah, and you see that with Olivia. You see somebody that wasn't born with it, but the trauma created that for her. I don't know the background of Malachi. I know some people are born with personality disorder, so I don't know if that's something he was born with or whether it occurred, but I know that the trauma would have definitely amplified it for him.
Absolutely.
And, something that I loved about Little Liars was how we also get all of these missing pieces. It's like we get the behind the scenes moments, and it forces you to look back at the first book and realize Malachi was experiencing things that we really had no clue about at the time. And we get to see his mind and his past, and it changes the way you view their dynamic and him.
Okay, so we've talked about Olivia and we've talked about Malachi, but obviously they're not the only people who are caught up in all this. And I really want to talk about a few of the other characters. So let's talk about Ewan at the end. What the heck was that happened?
So don't even get me started there. You know how I am about Ewan. I'm like Ewan for life. Picket fence
Yeah.
or picket sign, the whole way for him. I am Team Ewan. And so him dying of some mystery illness, what the heck? Like, I was so upset and mad about him dying. And then that brings in all the other things because I know how Cade felt about Tobias when you read the book. Like, he didn't want Tobias and Arya together. So I don't know. I was so upset about that.
Yeah, I don't really understand because nowhere in Psychotic Obsession, nowhere in Edge of Darkness, did they say that Ewan was sick, that anything was wrong with this man, and all of a sudden we get to some epilogue and he's dead. What is going on?
Yeah, and they said it had been an illness that he had had for a while.
Right,
Like,
when?
Yeah,
When were you going to tell us?
That's not anything you discussed with us, like, and then you
Right,
just
you
kill him.
didn't. You don't tell us when our person's sick. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was not happy about that at all. Very upset. So, I kind of wanted Ewan. I know a lot of people, and I love my daddy Tobes, all day. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people wanted to see Tobias and Arya back together. However, I just was really rooting for Ewan and Arya to have a truly happily ever after. Plus, like I said, Cade not happy about this. So I can't imagine that would not have caused conflicts. I'm excited to see as books go on, hopefully to get some more info because I don't know. I'm confused.
Right. I don't think you had to kill him to do it. I mean, I really think that you could have spun it in a way to let Arya have both, whatever. You did not need to kill this sweet man to make this happen and to not even tell us like what happened to him. That sucks, but maybe once we get the kids' story, maybe it'll elaborate a little bit on that, because it will be with Cade's daughter. So that would, in a way, be her grandpa. Ewan has always looked at Cade and Luciella as kids. So, I don't see them not figuring out a way to spin Ewan and Tobias as grandpa. So hopefully we'll get some more information there because I would like to know what on earth happened.
Yeah. At least put a label on the sickness so we have an idea of like what
Right.
actually happened.
I was just going to say, you have two major, scientists, people who work with diseases, and you're telling me there was nothing for whatever this was? Like, which I understand there's some things that science doesn't have an answer for right now, but what did they do to try to battle this? What happened? Arya and Tobias, that's what they did. I mean, they worked with terminally ill people.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think. Here's just a thought, like all that Tobias goes through in the Edge of Darkness. He wasn't on his meds for a while. Maybe Tobias, got tired of Ewan being in the picture. And
Right.
I mean, he has the ability to do it because why wouldn't Arya be able to help him? And why wouldn't Tobias be able to help him unless Tobias was the one? I don't know, just a little nugget of something to think on. Wonder if Tobias did it.
It's not like he hasn't killed for before.
I mean, he's putting people in cages, and that would not be beyond him to finally get his girl. I don't know. Just a thought.
All right. I hope not, though. That's the definite way I don't want to see it go. I don't want it to be by Tobias's hands, but you never know.
Yeah. We don't know. I mean, he's capable, so we'll see. And I think it's really interesting how at the end of Little Liar, we see Malachi's son and Kate and Stacy's daughter connect. And, it's really funny because they're chatting and Cade tells Malachi to keep his son away from his daughter. And Malachi is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You've got two MMCs that are crazy in the best possible way. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. But, we are going to eventually get their story. And I am so excited about that because I need that story. I think we all need a happy ending there.
Yeah. So just to put this out there, we will be getting, based in Luciella's book, we will be getting the children's book. So Malachi and Olivia's son and Kate and Stacey's daughter. That one is the one I'm really excited for. I can't wait to see how that unfolds. And then we also will be getting Angela and then the Russian Brothers book. So Xander, the one that was actually supposed to marry Olivia, who ended up helping her and wasn't the bad guy we thought he was, him and his brother will be getting a book with Angela.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And like you said, I'm most excited about their Kate and Stacy's daughter and Malachi and Olivia's son, because I honestly, two families with that much chaos, like I can't see it going any other way. And I'm really excited to see how these families are going to try to manage this relationship. I think it's going to be interesting and fun. And then Uncle Bass coming in is going to add a level of hilarity to it. So I'm looking forward to it.
And you never know, Barry's children might be in it too.
I know. I love Barry. He's like the guy on the side that doesn't get much interest, but he's a good guy. And he's like, what was he, like 2 years younger than Cade, or like he's like Cade's age?
I think so. I'm not sure.
They were similar in age, so he's not older. He's not going to be an old guy. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. Barry was the side character that the story needed, for sure.
Yeah. Him and Bass. It would not have been the same without him and Bass, for sure.
All right, let's switch gears and let's talk about the spice that was in the book. What was your favorite spice scene that Malachi and Olivia had?
Oh my goodness, the stairs. It had to be the stairs scene. I mean, I was like, wait a minute. But then also like, okay. Have you seen the meme where it's like, I don't like this, but then, oh, I think I do. That's kind of how I felt with that.
Yeah.
But then also the chase scene in the field. Loved that. Can never look at a screwdriver the same way again.
No.
What was your favorite?
I think it's when he's chasing her and she doesn't know that it's him. He's pretending to be Kai, So I think, yes, the screwdriver was like, oh, God. But yeah, I think that was definitely my favorite. And I think it was the most impactful, too.
Yeah. We have a running joke now with my husband. So if there's a screwdriver laying out and I'm like, Malachi? And so now he knows what I mean. He's like, no.
I know. When I was making my Web of Silence Crocs, I had to search for screwdriver croc charms. And my husband's like, why are you putting that on the Web of Silence croc charms? And I'm like, well, you see, and told him about it. But I had to have the screwdriver on the Crocs. There's no way.
It is necessary.
Yeah.
It is absolutely necessary. Okay. So was there a scene for you that you seen the vulnerability of Malachi and really got your heart?
I think it was after we found out about Isaac, when they're getting intimate there, but Isaac is in the picture at that point. I think that is when, we heard about after she was pregnant and he started more making love to her than, what their normal is. I think that's the point when you've seen him being vulnerable because he was so scared to be a dad, but it was happening and he was letting it go. But he was being gentle with Olivia. He was loving her in a way that he could. It was new to him and it was something foreign, but he did it for her, for the baby. I think that was what was so meaningful to me.
So, Cassie, do you think that there was too much spice in this book or just right?
I think that with the genre, it's always going to be heavy spice, but I always think that Leigh has a wonderful way of making it make sense in a way to make it fit. Not just, oh, well, better throw another spice scene in here, put another one in there. I think that it's purposeful and that it's needed at the time or she wouldn't have put it in there. So while, like I said, all dark romance is spice heavy, I do think that she does really well of knowing the right amount. So I'll go with no on this one.
Yeah, I agree. She definitely pushed the boundaries. I feel like more in this one than EOD, but in a good way. So I think it was perfect. I mean, even the screwdriver scene, like there's purpose in it. It wasn't just for shock value like we've talked about.
I think when it comes to that screwdriver, I think there's more purpose than what she... When it comes to the screwdriver, I think there's more purpose than what maybe quite meets the eye because it's actually, it's used for pleasure, But what's the first thing he grabs when Olivia's taken? The screwdriver. It is a pleasure tool, but it's also a weapon for Malachi. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I actually love that he grabs the same screwdriver that he used on Olivia when, she's being taken. He grabs it and he uses it. And I think that it's kind of cool to look at it as, it's this multi-purpose thing. It brings her pleasure, but it also saves her.
Yeah. And Leigh's great at that. I mean, the way that she writes these spy scenes, there's always that purpose in it. Yeah, it's fun. It's great to read, but there's a reason for it. And the stairs scene and how he responded to Dad, and you just see more of Malachi. So she writes things very well. Push the boundaries again, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cassie, we're going to switch segments. We're going to switch gears here. Okay. So would we survive the story? That's what we're going to do. Would we survive the web? So Cassie, you wake up and you realize you're tied up. What's your first move? Are you staying calm and trying to figure out what's happening? Or are you immediately panicking?
Too much anxiety for that. So I'm panicking all day. If I feel restrained in any ways, I'm going to panic. So
same. Yeah. I am not staying calm. Now, in certain situations I've found myself in, I think because anxiety is my normal, in hard situations I tend to be more calm. But in this situation, I don't think I would be calm. I think I'd still be panicking.
Right. I agree. I come from a long line of nurses, so I actually do really well in high stress situations. But when it comes to something like that with me being restrained, I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think I would like that. Yeah, so she definitely pushed the boundaries, but in a good way. Cassie, I have one more question before we wrap up this episode. So what was the most emotional moment for you in this whole series?
I think it would definitely have to be when Malachi is begging Olivia and when he starts, signing his heart away, and when he asks her to please choose him. Nobody ever chooses me. I can't talk to you with my voice and I can't make love to you while telling you how beautiful you are. I think that whole part of Malachi's speech, there's a reason why it's on merch and why, people just absolutely use it on everything, because it is so impactful. And I think people feel it on such a emotional, heartfelt level that it's just it's so popular because it's so real and it's so heartbreaking. And that is the first time with Malachi's ASPD that we see true heartfelt love and emotion, and it's raw and it hurts, but it's the realest thing he can give.
Yeah, I agree. And mine with that would probably be at the end of Little Liar. Malachi says this quote, and this is on some merch too, but it says, he says to her, "I love you now. I loved you yesterday when we were kids, when we were teens, when you had me thrown in jail, and when I found you again. I love you tomorrow, next month, next year, when you're mother and my child, and when we're old and gray. I'll love you even more because I'll have had a lifetime to fall more and more in love with you." And that will honestly probably be forever one of my favorite quotes of all time from any book.
Yeah.
She did this emotional book so well. And like, it's obviously the same author of EOD and this, but they felt so different, but both equally impactful. Like,
Yes.
I would say they're exactly on the same scale for emotional impact for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say this too, because we didn't really cover it. With the prison thing, we do find out that Olivia's foster mom is the reason why she didn't pull all those things back too. So, that's one thing that Malachi didn't know, is that the mom was actually pushing and blackmailing and guilting Olivia behind the scenes, hence the drunken voicemails that he got, and I think knowing that changes the perspective of Olivia entirely, and you get to see that she truly loves him and did not mean to hurt him. And I think it's also a good way to see her trauma as well, because she wanted to, please the foster mom so much. In the meantime, she's burning her heart in pieces by sending Malachi. So I know that had to be a hard situation. And that was the part right there that really changed my feelings towards Olivia.
Yeah, I think Leigh did such a really good job of kind of rounding it out, finishing it up, except for Ewan.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she did just a really good job of helping you see by the end the full scale of everything that had happened between Olivia and Malachi, all of their past that caused all of the trauma, and then wrapping it up in a little pretty nice bow for all of us who kind of needed to see that ending of them making it. You know, she did really well with that.
Regardless
Okay.
of the taboo aspect, I think it was a beautiful love story. I think that it's one of those things that love prevails. And I think that makes it a wonderful story. And I think it also shows that just because you have trauma and you're a fucked up individual, you still can have that happy ending.
Yeah, we need love too. All the messed up ones.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, so Cassie, what are we rating this on a scale? The scale from 1 to 4. What do we rate it for darkness?
For darkness, I would definitely say that it's going to get a 4. So what about spice? What would you rate that on our scale?
Oh, 4. Way 4. Emotional damage. What do you think?
4. I mean, their backstories, their childhoods before the Vises. Oh my gosh, that broke my heart. I mean, I hated reading it.
Yeah, I agree.
So for the overall obsession, we have 1 heart to 5 hearts. What would you do?
5 all the way. I feel like, I don't know, anything that she writes has got to be all these. Like, I'm just obsessed with her work in a healthy way.
Yes.
But I loved it. So 5 stars for sure.
So that wraps up our Web of Silence episode. We know it was a little longer than normal, but we had so much to say on this duet. So stay tuned for our next episode where we will be interviewing USA Today bestselling author Lucy Smoke, and we are so excited to have her.
My goodness, yes. I love her books. Okay, so remember to subscribe, like, and share to support our channel. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're an author or narrator who would like to be a guest on our show, please reach out to us by email, which can be found on any of our Obsessions After Dark social media pages.
And until next time, stay obsessed, and we'll see you after dark.